Hey,
Hey! Good morning, Kevin.
good morning, Chris. How are you today?
I'm having the best day ever. How about you?
I don't know that I'm quite there yet, Phineas, but
What is that? Phineas?
Phineas and Ferb, right?
I don't know what that is.
Oh, so it's a cartoon show, and they would always, they had these wild imaginations and everything that they could build and stuff like that, and it's like best day ever, always. You're gonna have to look. I'm sure you could find a best day ever meme from Phineas and Ferb.
I,
So.
I'll have to check that out. There's a SpongeBob SquarePants "Best Day Ever" song that
Okay.
someone recently sent me. Uh,
Yeah, that's it's a fun one, so it's pretty wild.
well,
Aaron, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
yes.
Hello,
Good morning, Alan. oh,
Alan.
Alan likes it as well, so
What?
I should check it out, right?
Yeah, yeah. It
Okay.
it is a fun show. We used to watch when my kids were younger. We used to watch it all the time. I enjoyed it with them, like he says. It's great for adults as well, but and really the kids loved it. So, um,
Yeah. That's I'll have to look and check that out. It's good to
but
see everyone in the comments. Let us know what your favorite cartoon show that is safe for kids yet fun for adults.
yeah,
That'll be
yeah.
our prompt for today, right?
But
Um,
I think we should tell them the real reason why it's the best day ever, right? What
best
what
day
what
ever.
what did we get this week that made this the best day ever?
All right.
And
So
notice
like
I already have it earmarked once.
w- well done. Well done. So, okay, hang on. Maybe we're going to deride. We're going to be talking about data meshes here, but hang on, Kevin. Bring that back.
Okay.
What is it in optimizing DAX that you found so interesting that already that's that deep in that you put a bookmark in? I mean, what
Yeah.
page is that? I
That
mean, that's not
is
like light
around page
reading.
447, I think. So
Four
I I
forty-seven.
I read through the table of contents, and there was something that jumped out at me, right? Um, and I just started kind of looking at, and it's talked about testing the snake model, right? Yeah, over a little bit. There you go.
Come
Testing
on.
the snake model, and I'm like, what the heck? This is a term I haven't heard before, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I brought it up yesterday on a call I was on too, and somebody else started looking at it, and so I started looking at it between yesterday and this morning, and the snake model, right? So it gets into a part about modeling many to many relationships, which is always
Mm,
challenging.
yep.
And so it talks about three different ways: a bidirectional model, utilizing the star model for it, and then getting into the snake model.
Mm,
So I've
mm,
scanned through it just a little bit. Um, many to manys, especially like when you're having to build other things into it, becomes very challenging. And I know I've done a few things here and there that were okay, and sometimes not as okay, and everything. So I really want to study this section to improve my many to many modeling and how to test when I want to do it. Oh, an Nader. Yeah. That Aaron's going back to Phineas and Ferb. Everything was named with an Nader.
I did like-
I think
Example.
Aaron, right?
What is?
That was, well, because they had the evil guy too, which was a very bad. He was like supposed to be like an evil scientist, but he was really horrible at it. And everything he built was an innator, and eventually the innator would always destroy him and his plans and everything.
That's
So,
so funny.
Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, yeah, and they had an original song almost every episode, and it's a fun one. The whole live stream. We're gonna start a whole new. Join me on my channel for Phineas and Ferb evaluations.
Dr. Doofenshmirtz.
Yes, yes, you found it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Alan put it. Yeah, that was his name. Uh,
All right. Well, like I can play along. I don't know exactly what it is, but today we're going to be talking about Detonation, and we'll be spending some time hitting in on all of that. Um, while Kevin's grabbing a drink, but so we are
yes.
putting in a plug in for optimizing DAX and like the
Mm-hmm.
patterns inside of here. This becomes incredibly important. Especially as you get into like your larger models. I mean, Power BI and the tabular engine is very deceiving in many ways because you could do some crazy powerful things that really performs almost no matter what you throw at it. And then you hit
Mm-hmm.
like this wall of like, oh, it was fast yesterday and it didn't just like gradually become slow. It like it became like it didn't move, right? And
Right.
so it's a big challenge for a lot of people, and that's where like oftentimes optimizing DAX can really help you with it. I think it does go into like the knowing how you optimize your DAX will also help inform you on what model changes you need to make in order to make that work and function, right?
Yeah. And I would also say, right, as you learn it and you understand the patterns, just because you're working with a smaller set of data doesn't mean you shouldn't try to design it right in the first place, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
as we know, like this in smaller type of stuff, because the in memory and DAX could be so fast, on smaller type of stuff that a lot of people get away with a lot of things. I work with a lot of smaller clients. I still try to model it the right way based upon what I learned from these type of things, so
Mhm.
that you know, I don't know, maybe it's shoot myself in the foot, but I don't think I want them to call me back a year later going, "Hey, all of a sudden this performance is, you know, off, and can you redo it?" Maybe it'd be nice, right? I'd rather have them call me back to say, "Let's do the next good project," right? Um, type of thing. So I tend to still always build in the right standards and everything as I go, because
As
I
well, you
never know
should.
if they're going to glow.
We're supposed to be
Yeah.
professionals that are building bridges that will last and
Yeah.
solutions that will last as long as humanly possible, not hacking and slashing stuff into place to keep
Hmm.
our billing going, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a that I have no interest in that those types of solutions and
Right.
playing those games, right? Because it serves it might serve a client for a month, it won't serve them for a year or 2 years or three
Hmm.
years down the road, and it just doesn't make sense, right?
Right.
All right, but
Definitely.
let us get into a
Do we have do we
detonation.
have rules first, or
Oh yeah, yeah. God bless us all. Like
we don't need no stinking rules?
right, right. Like today's my first day. Like, I'm back. All right. Rule one. Please, Kevin and I have been through this stuff. We know a lot of it. Well, Kevin may ask questions. Really, we're here to talk with you. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat. Happy to talk more about them, go into more details on stuff. Rule two, please don't repeat any questions. Uh, there's not so many people in our chat yet, unfortunately, that like this is not a problem. You ask a question, especially if it's with a Q, you'll go ahead and you'll get that. All right. And then,
Hmm.
uh, uh, if you're not on YouTube, come over to YouTube to join us in the chat. Our interaction and our integration with the YouTube side is much better than it is the other streaming platforms because we're on X and we're on Twitter and soon you might even see us on Twitch and some other platforms that are out there because I can stream to apparently 13 different places, and that helps with penetration. So
Wow.
eventually, we're going to see like this go live all sorts of places. So do that. Make sure you join us on our social medias. That helps both Kevin and myself out. And then do the whole social media thing, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Okay.
All that fun stuff.
Yeah.
All right. Data mesh.
All
Data
right.
meshinator.
Data meshinator. Right. So what are we talking about when it comes to data mesh? Well, if you ask ChatGPT, this is what ChatGPT says a data mesh is, right? And like I'll let you look at it. I'll let you Google all of this stuff. You can read this in depth. I'm going to explain it the way I think it makes sense to me. A data mesh is how we're currently actually really working with and managing data. But the problem is our governance and many times our view of what data we're managing is just that central hub, that central point, that that data warehouse, that lake house that we have visibility to and that we manage inside of our IT or data organizations. It's not paying attention to, and it's basically like playing dumb to everything else that's in use. Like you're not paying attention to what HR is doing to the data or sales or ops or any of that stuff. And that honestly, that becomes incredibly problematic because most of the time what this means is you don't know what people are doing with their data. And most companies are finding like if they do a deep dive into who's using what data and where does that data come from, it's not coming from that central source. In fact, often 96% of the data consumed inside of an organization or more is coming at least 3 steps away from that central source.
So that central source, that, because I love that you have that up there, right? Because it's, I don't think I've seen that in a lot of other type of setups, especially for a data mesh or whatever. But I first, and even when you kind of explained it, like if I'm thinking you started out with the original concept of having a central data team, right? IT,
Mm-hmm.
typically within IT or whatever, building out your initial central data warehouse or whatever. Is that really what's in in this bubble of the central data,
Yep.
right? Because then it could also be like sales and other stuff you're already bringing into the warehouse. But then it's like what sales and HR could consume some of the central data to extend and go from there.
Well, that's exactly right. Because what you're seeing is like, okay, that all of the data or the bulk of the data may start in that central space,
Mm-hmm.
but it's being copied into data marts. It's being
Mm-hmm.
copied into data flows. It's being copied into Excel dumps or Access databases or
Usually
you
that.
yeah, you count the infinite number of things that the sales leadership does or
Mm-hmm.
business operations do with the data that they pull from that central source. And now now you're no longer a central team or a central, you're steps of control away from that.
Yeah.
Now you're managing data using all these different tools, all these different things that just people don't have visibility to, or your central teams and data teams don't have visibility to what's being consumed, who's consuming
Mm-hmm.
it, and how they're doing it. Right. So while I talk about I love my central IT data teams, don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
What data mesh is doing is it's recognizing that these things are already possible and necessary, and then it's creating a mechanism and governance for how the teams interact and work with each other. Okay.
Yep.
And it's basically saying, hey, you know what, don't have your blinders on to just look at that central solution, right? Look at everything inside of your data estate and
Mm-hmm.
realize you're not going to be able to control everything inside your company if your company is going to continue to operate and exist,
Yeah.
right? So,
So, and maybe it's a little too early for this question, but and you could postpone it if needed. Does it also mean that you have to start recognizing that people in your business units, let's say HR, right,
mhm.
could potentially have the technical skills to do what they need to do with that data, right? Maybe not as advanced as what your central IT team, but it seemed to me that was a lot of challenges right? Or they're like, well, they might not have the skills. I might need to train them. And in a couple places I've seen, that people, I'll say much younger than me because I'm old, were coming in and they had these skills from just the way these kids these days are being trained in college or whatever, right?
Right.
So,
Well, I'm going to toss it out there that
okay.
when we talk about data mesh purely, I always think of these as like business religions, right?
Okay.
Like data mesh is a business religion that you could follow every strict tenet of it, but most companies cannot and should not attempt it, right? Like some companies follow all of agile and they do all, they do the stand-ups,
Yeah.
they do this,
Hmm.
they've got their scrums, they've got their sprint reviews, they've got their sprint planning, they've got their program increment or PI planning, right? Like they do all of the things, but most companies do a flavor of that. And so we're going to talk about data mesh first as like a religion and how it should be set up or how you should think of it, but then we're going to talk about like how you could actually um actually get up and running and working with it. And yeah, sorry to hear uh Donald that you broke a Databricks job. Uh yes, and yes, maybe more of a philosophy other than a religion. But the reason I call it a religion is because like you'll have some people that get so passionate about it, like they become like a high priest or priestess. Um, uh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
I know where he's going with this.
yeah. Or no, Kim, that's religion.
No,
No,
he meant to say Kimball.
oh, Kimball. Okay, all right, all right, all right, all right.
If you know Donald, he's got to work that word into every conversation. So,
Okay, all right. Well, he's right, but all right. So, but you're spot on, Kevin. So inside of the data mesh, what we're saying is that you know what, every department, be it the central IT team that we have, uh, who's going to manage their lake house and semantic models and their warehouses and maybe even KQL databases or whatever, right? Those capabilities that IT has, finance, HR, sales, or just generally speaking, every other organization is going to need to
hmm
have those same common capabilities, right? So it's not just IT that needs to do those things. It's everyone who needs it.
hmm
And if we structure and set this up so that everyone's able to do it, then it becomes really what's the word I'm looking for? It becomes really flexible, so we can
hmm
actually just quickly go into and like, okay, IT or sales, go ahead. You can, here I'm giving you those capabilities. You can run and do something. But if you ever have to pull it back or take something off of their hands and move that into central IT, there's no rebuilding or reprocessing it, right?
Yeah.
You're not going into some crazy access database or some weird freaking tool, right? You're going to common tools, common capabilities so that it could,
Hmm.
when the time comes, move back into that central source.
Sounds like there's a platform that helps us with that.
Well, there really is. And that's, uh, um, and I mean, honestly, when we get into the core principles of this, you're gonna like, and these are in the book. I don't have the book handy for me, but if you look at like what are the core principles of data mesh, like yeah, Microsoft Fabric was built around these concepts, right? So
hmm
number one, data should be domain oriented. In other words, the people who own uh, own the data and control the flow of the data, they need to be able to control what's being consumed and manage that, right? I think one of the big challenges we've had with those central teams in IT is that there becomes so much red tape to keep that up and running, to keep that up and going, and
hmm
IT's never going to have the business knowledge that people in the business are going to have. They can't adjust fast enough, right?
Right.
Um, and that transitions immediately into data has to be a product that's consumed inside of your organization. What do I mean, data as a product? Well, if you're a domain owner, you have an obligation to provide the data in a format and a structure that the other people in your organization are able to consume and use. And that doesn't mean you're just giving people access to reports. That means you're
Mm-hmm.
giving data to them in the way that they can, number three, self service their own needs and consumption of that data, right? So that maybe they need to run data science on top of your data. So you need to give
Mm-hmm.
access to the lakehouse, or you have analysts that are in another area that want to run classical queries against it, or they want to do some Excel workbooks against it. All of those
Mm-hmm.
things are need to be like self-service, and so other teams are completely able to do that. And then that
Makes
leads
sense.
into the last thing, which is the federated governance, and that's how do you spin everything up? How do you connect? How do you get visibility? How do you get agreement into how people should be accessing and securing their data? Does that align with your understanding, Kevin, of data mesh?
Yes, definitely, right? And then it's this data as a product, right? That I keep hearing talked about quite a bit. So as we get into that part of it, I think it's going to be very interesting because it seemed to me, looking at ways of implementing that, it just was very complex just a little over a year ago. So,
Right, 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 right. And we already hit on like the domain oriented architecture,
hmm
but data as a product, I think, is something that not a lot of people think of or understand how this is going to work. Right. So
hmm
to me, this really goes back to our old pyramid of enablement, right? Where we've got certified and endorsed content that's available inside your organization. Um, but we're going to extend it beyond just certified and endorsed reports and semantic models. We're going to talk about like certified and endorsed like pipelines or notebooks or lake
hmm
houses or warehouses or any of the various things that you might be needing to offer up inside your organization. You're going to want to be able to do that broadly across your stack and solution. Now, I kind of like this image because you're going to have a set of tools and capabilities that your enterprise is using and consuming that's going to be very, very broad. And but as you go down that stack, as you go down that list, suddenly the utilization is going to become much more refined or much more specific to the needs of any given department, team,
hmm
or even individual. Now, um,
Makes sense.
does that make sense? Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, right? And back to what I kind of you know looked at and tried to figure out ways of implementing it before, and even trying to talk about having these standard tools, right? To show or to say when you set things up, just the amount of effort, even just using kind of Azure, just to kind of set it all up. That's kind of where it fell down to me a couple years ago, right? When
Hmm.
we were studying this for a client and everything, and I'm like, man, it's just going to be a lot of effort just to even kind of stand it all up, and where the workspace and having those set of tools. So what I could imagine, right, the tools that we have inside Fabric now. So what I could imagine is it could be very easy to say, hey, HR says, hey, we're ready. We want to get into this mesh architecture with you. Okay, let's set up your domain,
Hmm.
right? And you could very easily script it out to say, and I think most of this is there with the APIs now. Create a workspace. We'll create your lake house, and it's going to be named this. Create your first set of tools or whatever, and then you may have other workspaces below that the HR people use, not the IT people, right? And then they start taking the data from that higher one, and then our domains in Fabric, right, kind of push everything together. I think I'm getting deeper than maybe you wanted to, but this is just like the way you presented it, going, okay, this is obvious now how much easier it is to do,
But
you know.
Kevin, you're spot on, because what you're talking about is you're establishing what the data contract is for the platform.
hmm
How does the enterprise relate to the department, team, and individual, and how do all of these interact with each other, right? So everyone's able to do what they need to do with the data, but they can do it in a way that we have oversight and understandings of it, right? So that they can go on to this next thing, which is self-service,
Yeah.
right? So they can consume whatever it is that they need to consume, and the product owners, the domains, have a responsibility to prepare and share this stuff with other people, right? Like in the
Mm-hmm.
same way, Kevin, like sales will send an Excel spreadsheet over to someone like, oh, here's the data you need. HR, I
Right.
know that IT's not giving you the data. I'm doing an extract of it and I'm sending it to you because you need to have the sales information, and IT doesn't own the data. I own it. And
Mm-hmm.
right. Like you have to provide a mechanism for people to access and use that data, right?
Yeah, eliminate those power automates that's finding the attachments in the emails and
Right,
moving it
right,
somewhere, right? It gives
right.
you a standard, even if you got it, like you just said, you're going to have to share something by a spreadsheet. Maybe you have to jump up a little bit more and say consume it with one of those other, with one of the other tools and get it into a lake house or a version of your lake house and then share it through that. You're setting up the contract to start doing things the same way. So then as that grows, and it does need to get pulled into central IT, right?
Yep,
They know exactly how, because it's all been done close to the same way. And then I don't know if you brought Donald's things up, right? Conform dimensions use would help, right?
yeah.
Well,
And we're
that,
we're actually going to dive right into a demo that includes
yep,
that. So,
yep,
because that's where we get into like, okay, how do we govern the data, govern these environments, govern these capabilities, so people understand what are the rules, how does it work inside of our organization, how do we consume this, right? And
mm-hmm,
um, I'm going to straight up call out that like there are big challenges here, right? Most companies and teams are not ready for a full on data mesh implementation, but you're ready for uh, recognizing components of this exist already. And
mm-hmm,
how can you leverage a tool like Fabric to not just enable these capabilities, but like get line of sight and visibility into this functions inside your organization. Okay. Now I'm going to do an actual demo of this, and we're actually going to
woohoo.
go into how we build out all of these components, right? So we're going to be starting with the mesh itself. Holy son of a nutcracker! I accidentally closed one of my reports right before I went into this, but um, so we're going to be designing a data mesh, right?
Mm-hmm,
And we're going to be focusing on three domains. We're going to focus on marketing, sales, and our global domain inside the organization. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to basically take one of our existing models, right? Because like this, I'm telling you, this already exists in so many companies. You just have to like come up and understand that this is out there, right? Because
mm-hmm.
if we look at this, I've got marketing information. I've got my global conforming
Mentions,
dimensions.
yep.
Yep. And I've got my specific sales content over inside of the sales space, right?
Yep.
So, like, this is how my ownership is going to do. So, I want to make sure I plan this all out. Once I get that done, though, I'm going to go in, I'm going to create simple yet impactful and powerful roles that allow people the proper levels of access to do this work. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I recommend you follow as simple as you can, and as complex as you need to. So in this case, I coach everyone having like an admin role that can build, create, control the content, and have a reader role for the people who are going to be consuming the content. Don't make it
Mm-hmm.
any more complex than it needs to be, unless you need to do that. Then we'll show about like how do you go in and create domains. We'll show you the different domains that you have, and then we'll actually show you how you can build out reports and themes. So it's obvious when you're looking at a report or something from uh, any of the given um, given domains. Okay. All right.
Wonderful.
Does that make sense?
That, and I love how you took a semantic model that currently exists and, showed how, yeah, you already have this in your architecture. You may not just be calling it that the right thing, and you may not have put it in with this type of discipline, and slowly grow from there, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, wonderful. All right, let's
Yep.
hope the demo gods
There you go.
are doing
That's
well.
Wagner's law. As simple as you can, as complex as you need. um,
Wow. Hey, do we want to call that a law or a maxim, right? Do we want to have,
oh,
another maxim out there?
I, I
I'm
I
up
like
for
that.
it.
Yeah. All right. There we go. Jack has coined it. All right. So first thing first, we start with our design, and I kind of already designed it. Like we've decided that we're going to have three different marketing areas or three different domains. So we're going to go out and we're going to create those domains. First thing, we're going to start with our axis, right? So I'm going to make sure that I have inside uh, inside my domains, I'm going to have an admin and a read role for each group, right? So in this case, I've got a sales admin, I got a mesh sales admin, and a mesh sales read. Now, I also have added in a mesh sales read underscore R. Can you take a guess as to what underscore R might mean in the context
Hmm.
of a data mesh?
Um, my first jump was to some type of restriction for row level security, but then with the admin part, it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
Um, so I think my answer is no. I cannot. I cannot make the
All right.
leap. I haven't seen anything in the chat yet that anybody there has.
Okay, so what do we use underscore for R for? We use that. You're right, for restricted, right? So this is
Okay.
going to be something that maybe it's not ready for prime time. Maybe it's something that even for people that are inside of my classical sales like space, I
Hmm.
want to have it just conform for a targeted group. For example, maybe I'm going to roll out a new surrogate key system, or I'm going to roll out a mechanism to grade and uh, like track and rate employees. Maybe I want to run that system for a while, maybe 3 to 6
Yeah.
months, to make sure that that system isn't going to have any artificial or unpredictable results from it, right? Like if
Right.
I know who my my key employees are, I don't want to necessarily create a system that's going to ostracize them or cause them
Yeah.
any problems, right? So maybe so that's where we're going to create that R framework. Does that make
That make
sense?
Yeah, it's kind of like maybe your first test audience or something,
Mm-hmm.
There's some
Yep.
people you have to share it with and start seeing some things, so you're setting up your security there.
Yep.
One of the things I did want to point out is it looks like you're creating all your security groups in Azure.
Mm-hmm.
So they're Azure security groups, not Office 365 type groups or whatever, because if you did it in Office 365, they could be a little bit more restrictive. So this is a part you got to jump over into your Azure portal to handle and setting up these security groups.
So why do we want this, Kevin?
Oh, it's just so much easier to maintain, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than individual access. It's
Yep.
a lot easier to, if you have to remove people or add people. To me, it's just it's for maintenance. It's easier, right? You can
Sure.
assign owners, um, and you can allow other people to kind of add some people in and everything if you need to. So you could delegate that out.
Yep.
Um,
And
it's
especially something
yeah.
like an owners group in this space
Hmm.
is you might have for sales, the owner of this is, oh my gosh, what's the C-suite salesperson?
um, Chief Sales Officer,
Okay.
CSO,
Oh,
marketing.
whatever.
Yeah.
Well, whatever,
So
right?
it
Like,
depends on the company, right? That's why we always say CXO, because They could add so many letters in there.
But you can put that owner as someone who's going to decide who can be an admin or build and create, who you would never ever want to build or create stuff. You never want to give them those capabilities because, like, they may delete stuff, but they know, like, if Kevin is my boss, Kevin knows. Well, no, let's reverse it. If I'm Kevin's boss, you don't want to trust me with data. You want to trust Kevin with data, but you can give me the ability to say, okay, who works for me and who's going to manage it. It's going to be Kevin and Christina. So me as an owner can go in and say, okay, for my members, I'm going to have Kevin. Apparently, you're not in my tenant. All right, I guess I. Oh wait, no, I'm adding. Duh. Kevin Arnold.
Yep.
And Christina. Right? So I can select, I can add. Why did that not work? Oh, refresh. There you go. I could add them in, but you wouldn't want me actually doing that work myself, right?
Yeah.
So that's the big advantage. Plus, anything that's security in Azure goes into anything in M365, right? So security is across the board for Azure and M365. It does not go the other way.
The other way, right?
Everything in M365 doesn't really reflect into the Azure space at all. So this is a big one.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let's build.
Yeah, let's keep going. All right. Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go into domains. We're going to make sure that we've got a domain set up for each one. And, oh my gosh, we have admins that get set up. Sales. Admins get applied as well as...
Can you zoom in on that before you move so people could see? That's a little hard to read.
Sure.
But you took, basically, that's the admin group that you had in Azure portal, right? And just assigned it here. And it's that easy.
Yep.
Never have to think about it again. You only have to go to one place to add the people.
That's exactly right. And then you could go in and you can actually add in more information, or you can make it more complex if you need to. Don't make it more complex than you need to. Where's my Wagner's
as
law?
Simple as you can, as complex as you need.
Right.
There you go.
Right. So keep this as simple, and always fight for it to become simpler, right? Like if suddenly you're too complex, look to refactor and make it simpler. All right. So once that's in place, let me zoom just a little bit in to make it a little easier for you guys. Oh, there we are. I've got all of my domains created. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create some domains based upon two common usage patterns, right? I'm going to have a data and I'm going to have a reports. So it's a build and then a consume spaces inside of my data mesh. Okay. So I'm going to go in and let's take a look at my global data space. All right. And my global data is I'm going to, again, keep this as simple as I can. I'm going to build out my global data pipelines, and I'm going to load that pipeline into my global lakehouse, right? And let's go take a look. Remember, my global domain is going to have all of my conformed dimensions and anything fact-wise other teams or people should use. Right. Yep. Oh, Kevin, there you, or Donald, there you go.
Donald,
yep. Back room, front room. Yep, that's exactly right. This is my back of the house stuff, right? Now, in here, as we look through these different domains, you're going to see that this is where we're going to be managing all of our oh my gosh, what's the type of domain?
Dimensions.
There we go. Conform dimensions. And most importantly, this is where we're going to be defining our surrogate keys that we're going to be using across our entire platform. Okay.
Yep.
So it's in this space where we're going to define that. And if you start to get really complex, I'm going to even say that we're going to create a schema specifically for surrogate key management.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be one table, and the table is going to be comprised of the following columns. Um, Number one, it's going to be what's the source system that you're pulling from,
Mm-hmm.
and that's going to be a unique name. So if you ever have to have a second one, so let's say you've got Dynamics, but then
Mm-hmm.
someone spins up another Dynamics, or you buy a company that has Dynamics, you can have Dynamics, whatever, Dynamics One and
Instance
Dynamics.
one. Yep.
Yep, yep. Um, so uh, you're going to have your source. You're going to have the business key. You're going to have the surrogate key that gets created as part of that. That's a unique value that you're going to maintain right
Mm-hmm.
there. And then you're going to include a date created and process that created it. Okay.
Okay.
That's what you're going to have in just a surrogate or key dimension that will then be used by any process inside of your global or other domains that are building out their fact tables or enhancing their a data feed that's going to have the business key that's on it. You're going to all use
Okay.
that same business key. That makes sense?
That makes sense. So for training people on how to, set up their data and make it so that it's going to be able to join together, you got one place that they're doing the key translation.
Right.
Yeah.
And oh gosh, I wonder if I can find it quick. Uh,
Yeah, and
uh
and I kind of also see where you're headed with that, because a lot of times I've also put those as columns you don't expose out, as the source system and what the business key was, maybe right in the dimension.
yep.
Um, but I've done a little bit of what you're talking about too, in order to help manage it and make it easier. When you're trying to mesh all these things together years ago. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And Adam,
yes,
they literally just published a surrogate key video out there. Go check this out. This is like honestly, I haven't watched it yet, but like it's so critical in these
hmm
in the work that we're doing, that in your global space that you're creating, you have a surrogate key that's created and that's made available for people to consume and use. Okay. All right. Once that's in place, that's when we talk about, let's talk about building out our alternative dimensions. Okay. So if we go back and we look at our sales data, what do we see? We see the same capabilities out inside of our sales domain. We've got the same
yep,
pipeline, we've got a lake house, we've got a SQL endpoint, and we've got a
yep,
semantic model, right? Same
yep.
stuff,
Patterns. You're following patterns.
right? Everyone gets the same patterns, everyone can do the same things, but let's take a look at what we have. So, inside of sales, if you can remember, let me raise this up.
Yep,
All right, there are two dimensions that are explicit and solely owned by this domain. Or I'm sorry, there's a dimension and a
in fact,
fact. All right, so here's my dimension, here's my fact, um, that are owned by this domain, by the sales domain, right? They own
okay,
reseller and they own reseller, factory seller sales. Right?
okay.
Ah, yes. Everything else is shortcutted in, right?
Oh, you got it.
Oh, wait.
So employee you have there
Yeah.
owning as well.
Yep. But now it becomes really visible and easy to see what is inside of my domain that I own and what don't I own. And while it's easy to see, it's not like, oh, it controls the landscape. you can easily write queries that go back and forth in these, and you can do what you need to inside the space, right?
And so this also kind of sets up for trying to find ways. Let's say, for example, because we don't have an HR domain yet, right? Um,
Nope.
but let's say HR comes in later down the road.
Well, let's say marketing, right?
Yeah, I was going to go down with your employees, right? To say, hey, I'm going to change.
Oh,
I was going to
yep,
change in the sales one, right? Eventually, you might want to change employee to actually take data that is actually controlled from HR, right? But
yep.
go ahead with this part of it,
But
right?
but you're exactly right. That dim employee, we can switch that from being an import to a shared link on that other one, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Because I'm in marketing, and in marketing owns the customer, and
Mhm.
marketing owns internet sales.
Yeah.
They're using from our sales area back to reseller sales, and they're using dim employee. Both you can tell by the shortcuts, right? Now,
Mhm.
we also are using currency, dim date, and these others from a different domain, right? Now,
Yeah.
what's the challenge here? That I mean, you can
It,
see that the
yeah,
links are here.
right. But I can't tell off the top of my head what domain it's coming from.
That is spot on. So, one of the things that I'm evolving to endorse, and I think the platform's evolving along this line, is instead of it just being like a generic schema, I'm gonna
Mhm.
instead of it just being a DBO, is to rename that schema
Yep.
to be whatever domain it is, and then when that day comes where dim employee goes from, I mean, because this should be sales, right?
Well, this would be sales today, but it could be HR in the future.
Right. It could be HR in the future,
Yeah.
or it could, so it could be HR. I can't read that well, but
That's fine.
you could change it. You
Yep.
could make you could keep it the same with the sales dim employee until you're able to flip it into your semantic model.
Mhm.
And you just manage it along those lines so that you can have these other entities that can exist. But the advantage is I'm not duplicating data in any of
Right.
these places, right? Like, these are just the Delta files that exist inside each of these workspaces, and I'm up and running and ready to go.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm with you on that. I think that's great. Yeah, go ahead and you have to make it just a little bit more complex, but solve that problem with a naming standard that you enforce, right?
Yep.
And get that naming standard in all your different places. So come out with that ahead of time. And that naming standard can be very simple, and it would solve that problem of knowing where things came from.
Yeah. I will say the one thing that we don't have that to me is easy to share yet are views.
Mm-hmm.
So today, oopsies, did that wrong. Today, views have to be shared via code. Okay, so if you're going to be sharing views to people, right, where you don't want to just consume the data as it is, then you're going to have to share the code of the views. Like this statement has to be part of what gets shared out, so that if you're going to be sharing, like in this case, I use this view of my date dimension in order to like continuously update my the dates in my fact tables to be current, right? Because if you look at AdventureWorks, it's set like in 2009 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Yeah.
the people watching this were not born yet, potentially. So,
Yeah, Kentosa the same way, right? It needs to be
right, right,
updated. But and Donald posted kind of where my head was going as well with the data lake approach. What you might end up doing is you have your the query from your view, but
hmm,
then kind of materialize that into a table, right?
yep,
Ongoing, kind of keep replacing it or whatever. So then you're sharing at the table level. But that would be the way that I would try to solve it. At
hmm,
first, again, how complex it would end up being, but unless the view has something depending on the current time or something. Yeah, that you have to start thinking of when you get into you're orchestrating everything that runs, right? Where could that final materialize that view run, stands up before something else is going to consume it, say to refresh its, semantic model or something to that effect. So, um, but yeah, that would be one way to do it, to try it. And then, yeah, because those views within that SQL endpoint are only shareable to the other SQL endpoints or data warehouses that are like you could do um, the queries on it within other ones that are within that workspace.
Yeah.
It'd be
Yep.
nice if it could go cross workspace, and then I think it might also solve your sharing problem, if that, right. But we're already at that would be within the workspace. We're in 3-part naming. That would almost get to a 4-part naming type convention, which hasn't been introduced anywhere else. I don't think
But it could be.
it could
Maybe it
be.
should be. Right.
Maybe, yeah,
So
yeah.
if
Ideas.fabric.com.
yes, I was just about to say. Hang on. Hey, hang on. Or actually, first, go look out at aka.ms/fabric roadmap. See if it's out there. If it's not, head over to aka.ms/fabric ideas and put that out. Okay. So, I mean, I can't say I have uh, I have memorized the different all the things on the roadmap that are out there, but do check.
Yeah, I can't remember if that's on there or not, but I mean,
Yeah.
it makes sense at some point, and I don't know.
Yep.
Just because I lost track of time, right? Just time check 23 after. So,
Yeah, yeah. So we're gonna quick hit on the next thing. So now we talked about the back of the house stuff. On the front of the house, really like to see like, okay, how can we appropriately brand and design. Oopsie, let me get that out of the way. Brand and design content so it's clear that people are consuming information from a domain. So in this case,
mhm.
I'm sticking in here. Let me adjust this a little bit. I put, okay, so the main lower corner icon for the company is still there, but then my
Mhm.
background I set to a color that's going to be my standard color for sales, marketing, and global. Okay,
Yeah.
so that you understand who's creating that content you're consuming on the front end side. And then all you do is just use that inside of your reports that you're creating. So if marketing is going to create a report, that's perfectly fine. They can do that, right? And you can actually see inside of this report, I've got all sorts of metrics here that are using as marketing. I've got metrics that are coming from my reseller sales
Mhm.
space. Um, I don't, and I could even, if I wanted to, I could blend that with information that's coming from my, uh, uh, information that's coming um, from my internet sales, right?
Yeah.
So, right, so I
Right,
could just,
because it was linked over into your warehouse earlier. Yeah. Yeah.
right. So, makes it really easy to just bring that all together, create one view, so that becomes very consumable and easy for people to interact with.
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe something in the future we'll kind of dig into as well, right? Sharing those conform dimensions, right? And getting them into the semantic model with Tyndall. There's a easier way now to copy and paste those things, right? And
Well, that was great.
using yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Right. So setting up your Power BI project files, your PBIPs, right? And then be able to say, I think that becomes another artifact in your data as a platform, right? The things you're sharing,
Yep.
your data product. Here in the central one, here's the Tyndall for my conform dimension that you need to use in your other models, you
Right.
know? So,
Yep. Yep. And all of that stuff gets published and managed their code, and you can advance all of that inside your
mhm.
DevOps framework. But it's all still really really possible to get up and running inside of Fabric today. And I mean, you saw the you saw it's out there. Like it's up, it's running, it works, right?
Mm-hmm. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
I see Fernando asked, did I finish? We talked about that book. I didn't finish reading, the optimized acts. I put it under my pillow last night so I could just absorb it. It's easier than reading. So
And I'll say I did a full body workout this morning with it. So, it does weigh in at, wait a minute,
yeah, that way.
4 pounds. So, if you're just like doing like side lifts and that type of a thing,
Well, next time we're in the
like
same
throws,
yeah.
you can,
Next
you
time
can
we're
get
in
a
the
good
same
workout.
room, we'll use it like a medicine ball.
There you go.
Uh,
Oh my, interesting. Distinct count chapter is interesting.
wow.
Oh, I'm
I
gonna,
might have to put a second bookmark in now. So
yeah, distinct count. What chapter is that?
yeah.
I don't
Uh,
know. He's the PDF.
yeah,
A
he
lot
got the
lighter.
PDF.
Someone said that you could weigh gigabytes of data. That like,
Really?
yeah, if you have a hard drive and then you put a terabyte of data on it, and you weigh it, it has a weight. There's a weight difference. There. It's not big, but it is there. You can actually
Huh.
weigh data. Yeah. I thought that was fascinating.
I'd have to understand. I don't understand physics enough to think through it, but I would have thought because it's just
Ones
last
and
I knew
zeros.
things were kind of magnetic or flipping bits on and off type of thing, and I don't see how that changes the weight. But maybe it does. I don't know.
Page 353.
Oh wow. Okay,
Welcome to the
so
live stream as we go
yeah,
through page
as
through
we
the
like
book.
shut up and start looking at the book, right? Okay, so we're in chapter 13 then. So look
Different
around.
ways of performing a distinct count. Fascinating.
Yeah.
I wonder if we can get Alberto or Marco on the live stream to talk about this sometime. So I don't know.
Hmm. They'd
Um,
probably be interested, but yeah, so I don't know what time it would be, third time.
this is
And
probably much
oh
like Alberto was on my noon live stream once, so
yeah.
I bet this is much more conducive for them.
Well, I think Marco was up in Chicago because there was a bunch of people that were taking his
That's right.
class in Chicago. So I think we may
Yeah,
have missed part of our opportunity depending on his travel and stuff. So
yeah.
all righty. Well, it feels like we should be wrapping this up. We're pretty close to the bottom of the hour. Um,
Ain't that the truth? Well, thank you, Kevin. Thank you all
thank
for
you.
joining
That was
us.
a wonderful presentation. It fits really well into a lot of the type of stuff that we've been talking about. I hope a lot of people got something out of this. If you do, send us something on social media.
Yeah.
So,
And look for I'm going to do some videos on this that walk through each section there in more depth. But thank you guys all so much for joining us. We will see you guys later. Have a great
all
day.
right.
Peace.
Peace.
Digital combines strategic industry insight and advanced technical expertise to uncover and solve your digital transformation challenges. If you're interested in learning more, check out our website at bakertilly.com/digital.